This NFL Week 3 Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to score up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to Brown downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley.
Wilson, good as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is NFL Week 3 already. We'll get into, of course, our player props here for NFL Week 3 for the Sunday games. And we'll briefly recap what we saw, or lack thereof, in the Thursday night football game between the Jets and the Patriots. But joining me, as usual, to help me break everything down happening on the turf/the grass, I got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's up? Ready to put Thursday behind us already and see if we can move forward into a profitable weekend, man. We saw some some pretty poor football yesterday on one side of the football, and if you like unders, then you probably made some cash yesterday. And so interested, if that the unders that we gave out was the ones that we actually cashed. But I'm excited as always on a beautiful Friday to talk some props for Sunday, week 3.
Yeah, I mean, look, last night it was a Jets domination. Aaron Rodgers had a really good game. I mean, I don't know how much we really want to take away from it, because it was against the New England Patriots. And as kind of the weeks progress here, how bad or does that week 1 victory look for the Bengals now? Once the New England Patriots did go in there and got the victory there against them. But yeah, I mean, look, pretty one-sided last night. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was getting whatever he really wanted through the air yesterday. Had a really good game for the Jets there. I know he finished up with, I believe it was close to 270 yards in the game. I believe he was plus 750 last night to throw for 300 plus yards. Maybe if the game was a little bit more competitive, he probably would have gotten there. But I'm sorry, he threw for 281 last night. Did have 2 touchdowns as the Jets do get their second victory of the season. They now improved to 2-1. Get a little mini bye here with not having to play over the weekend. It looks like they're building up momentum now as they play the Denver Broncos next week. So it looks like that may be a winnable game as well for the New York Jets. On the other side for the Patriots, more struggles there. Number 1 with the offensive line. That's been the conversation for them, giving up 7+ sacks last night. Did the offensive line to that pass rush of the New York Jets. Jacoby Brissett, we talked about it. We locked a lot of his unders last night, whether it was his passing yards to go under, whether it was his longest completion to go under, and those they got there rather easily. He only threw for 98 yards last night. Ramondre Stevenson was pretty much non-existent. And obviously the game script changes and, the play calling changes when you're trailing by multiple touchdowns and you're not going to get much of a run game. And at a point for the Patriots, they said, we're pretty much out of this game. Let's throw Drake May out there and see what we got in him. But obviously the conversations are going to continue in New England and Foxborough there on when and if that quarterback change is coming, whether it be sooner or later for the New England Patriots to get Drake May in there. And it doesn't get any easier. I know they have the little mini bye there. They will be in San Francisco next week to take on those 49ers who are dealing with their injuries. I'm sure we'll talk more about that on this episode here. But Chris, I mean, that was pretty much the story last night, man. I know you mentioned, and we're talking offline a little bit, that the -6 right now in hindsight seems a little bit cheap now. But with the offensive line concerns, the Patriots coming off of an overtime game, short week on Thursday, it looked like it was a prime position for the Jets.
Yeah, it absolutely was a prime time position for the Jets. And sometimes we can talk ourselves, out of things. And I feel like I kind of did. I saw 6, even when the line was moving to, back towards the 6.5. And I think we discussed that on the show earlier this week on Wednesday when we did the show as well. But you mentioned him, if it was a banged up offensive line that was, if without your offensive line, you can't win a line of scrimmage. It's going to be difficult to win a lot of games. And, we've talked about it religiously already, but with the, the wide receiver group, the quarterback group, the offensive line group that was banged up. It was easy to get to the Jets yesterday, and neither one of us did. And like you said, in hindsight, it's always vision's always 20/20. But we live and we learn. We do learn that some favorites can cover here. That favors of 6 points or more can cover as well. So just 3 measly points for the Patriots, and we'll see what happens with them next. Pretty sure they'll lick their wounds and try to get back to it for next week.
Yeah, let's see what happens with that offensive line with all the turnover and injuries that they are dealing with there for the New England Patriots. But if you don't have an offensive line, your quarterback is not going to have much of a chance to get the football out and make some plays. All right, let's turn the page there from Thursday Night Football. We'll focus our attention going into Sunday for NFL Week 3. But before we do get over to the player props, let me remind everyone, the war against corporate gambling, it's heating up, and SGPN needs you to do your part. If you could take a couple seconds to rate and review our show here on the Propcast, it would mean a whole heck of a lot for us. Most importantly, tell a friend if you've already left us a rating and review. Word of mouth is pretty much the heartbeat of SGPN. We do all of our content for free. Everything's free on the website, picks, pods, everything is free here. So again, without our loyal listeners and getting those reviews and ratings in for the respective shows across the network, it would mean a whole heck of a lot for us here at SGPN. All right, Chris, let's get into our player props here for Sunday. I have a very long list this week. So it feels like a shooter shoot type of week, at least for me. Well, I think that honorable mention segment may be a little bit longer this week, but let's get into the quarterbacks here. What do you got?
I could not agree more. It's so much so, I'm not sure which one I like the most, honestly, but we'll get there when we get there. Let's go quarterback. We'll go, and this is actually one that I haven't even fully diving into, that may like even more than the rest of them, but we'll go Daniel Jones here. I like him to go up and over his pass attempts. So you look back at, what the Giants have done recently, and it's a whole lot of nothing. But both for the quarter, to me, this is more about the opponent, right? This is about the Cleveland Browns defense. And both opponents that the Cleveland Browns have faced so far have thrown the ball 30 times or more, right? So this pass attempts for Daniel Jones is 29.5. A little juiced at about 20 cents over on FanDuel is where I see the best line. Dak, 32 times, And we remember back to the first game of the season, Dak in that offense had a well-balanced attack. He didn't even have to pass the ball as much as we thought. Remember, we both like his pass attempts to go over after you shot that one out. I love that and ended up playing that. But Dak still passed the ball 32 times. Trevor Lawrence last week, 30 times, right? The Giants have utilized the pass not at the 9th highest rate so far. So they're getting the ball, out there, throwing at an average of 35 times per game. And at home, we expect this goes back to last year. We just expect the Browns rush defense to be really good. Last season, they gave up an average of just 89.6 yards per game, 3.9 yards per pop, and they both ranked in the top 8. And we've seen their rush defense, be pretty good this year as well. I know you talked me into an Ezekiel Elliott under on his longest rush attempt, and that got to the window and was a winner in week 1. And they haven't really, given up too many big explosive plays on the ground. So I'm trusting the Cleveland defense to do what it has done over the last year and some change here, and that's make opposing teams one-dimensional, take away the running game, and make Daniel Jones beat you. So I'll take Daniel Jones here up and over his 29.5 pass attempts. I think it'll be a game where if the Giants are going, I don't know if they're going to score or not, but if they do attempt to get close to scoring, it'll be on the arm of Daniel Jones. I'll bet his over 29.5 pass attempts here,
Yeah, this running game really for the Giants has, I want to say it could be better, for lack of better words there, right? They have Devin Singletary in that backfield there, a guy that's pretty much now turned into a journeyman throughout his career. And for his numbers haven't been too bad. Last week, he had a really good outing against the Washington Commanders. But again, we know how bad that Commanders defense has been. His first week was against the Minnesota Vikings, 10 attempts, 37 yards against that front line there. And then, we talk about the Cleveland Browns, right? What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? And it's really been how good that rushing defense has been. I know this year they are struggling a little bit. They are allowing 5 yards per carry, are the Cleveland Browns. But I think that, again, if you do get down trailing multiple times or multiple possessions in this game, like the Giants have over the first 2 weeks, I know last week they didn't have their kicker, but I think it's going to have to be on the shoulders of Daniel Jones. And again, you have the weapons on the wide receiving group, more and so with Malik Neighbors. I know Wan'Dale Robinson had a pretty good game, or he's been a little bit more consistent. So I think it has to be on Daniel Jones here, and I think the pressure is really on him and also this team to go out and get their first victory of the season. I know there are a 6.5 point underdog in this game, but I do think that if this team isn't, at the end of the day, if we did look at this game on Sunday when it's over and they did cover the spread, or who knows, possibly even win outright, that we probably did see Daniel Jones have a big game for the New York Giants. So yeah, definitely agree with you on this one. All right, for my first player prop here, there's 3 quarterback props I like this week. We talked about Dak. I think I'm going to go with Dak over on his passing yards this week at 253.5. They're going up against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens this season, at least through the first 2 weeks, have been one of the better rush defenses in the entire league. They're only allowing 2.7 yards per rush attempt over the first 2 weeks, which is the best in the entire NFL. And then you take a look at the running backs that they have faced thus far this season, right? It was, let me see if I can get back here, because page, the one that I usually use is not loading as it always goes here. Let me see. So running backs versus the Ravens. Here we go. So week 1, it was Isaiah Pacheco, and it was Carson Steele and Samaje Perine, right? That running back group. More so, it was Isaiah Pacheco. 15 rush attempts, 45 rushing yards there. Let's go back to last week. Zamir White, 9 for 24. Alexander Madison, 4 attempts, 1 yard. Amir Abdullah, 2 attempts, 1 yard. So the run defense has been really good. And we talked about how this backfield of the Dallas Cowboys is pretty much non-existent. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowell, I mean, it's not exciting, right? So I think that it's going to have to be on the shoulders of Dak Prescott to will this team to a win or keep the offense flowing here. And you take a look, let's look at the quarterbacks that the Ravens have faced thus far this season, right? So Patrick Mahomes, week 1, 20 of 28, 291 yards in that game, Chris. And then last week we saw Gardner Minshew in comeback fashion, 30 of 38, 276 yards. So I think that, again, for the Dallas Cowboys, the success on offense is going to have to come on the shoulders of Dak Prescott throwing the football here. I can see a world where he does have 260, 270, plus passing yards in this game against the Baltimore Ravens, just because I do believe that the Cowboys are not going to have any success on the ground here. So maybe when we look at it at the end of the night, when we look at this box score after this game is over, that you'll probably see maybe a 70-30 split from passes to run plays for the Dallas Cowboys. So I thought this number was conservative, 253.5. If you want to take the pass attempts to go over, I couldn't talk you off of that one either, but I'm comfortable here with a 253.5 here on his over passing yards here, Chris.
I absolutely love it. It correlates with one of the props that I'll talk about in just a few, but you mentioned a couple of things that really stood out to me as well, Munaf. So you talked about Dallas not running the ball. They are 24th in rushing yards per game right now. Mm-hmm. In rushing attempts per game, 24th. Running the ball just 23 times per game. 3.7 yards a pop, which is 24th as well. And they're averaging 85 yards on the ground, which is 26th, right? So you mentioned it. It's been, night and day between offense and, between passing and, running the ball for them. And then you also took a look at Baltimore. It's crazy as this sounds, Baltimore is the best team in the league in stopping the run right now, and the worst team at stopping the pass right now. Outside of the numbers that you mentioned, they're last in passing yards allowed per game at 257. And opponent completion percentage, 75.8. getting picked apart by Gardner Minshew in the second half. That's 30th right now in the NFL as well. So just some other key numbers to kind of add and, make your point even stronger. I like that look on Dak a lot.
All right. Before we get over to our next round of player props, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a lot of ways where you can maximize your entries. And I think the great part of it when it comes to the NFL season is that there's tons of ways to win with the NFL. And guess what? They also just added first touchdown projections over on Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Their lobby is always jam-packed with profit boosts and no sweat entries, and you can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. I'm going to use that Dak Prescott higher on his passing yards this week, 253.5 against the Baltimore Ravens. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure that promo code MACHINE over at Underdog Fantasy. All right, Chris, let's do running back props next. Where do you want to take us if you do have it for running backs?
Yeah, let's go to Pittsburgh. This should be a no-brainer. Looking at Najee, they go up and over his rush attempts here. Number sitting at 14.5, and I couldn't shy away from it because I saw that plus money over on BetMGM. So 14.5 rush attempts for Najee. Just to kind of set the table, you got Pittsburgh going up against one of the better rush defenses that we've seen so far, with being the Chargers. But week 1, for Najee, 20 carries. Week 2, 17 carries. And Pittsburgh continues to run the football like we expect them to do in the National Football. They lead the league in rush attempts 38.5 times per contest are they running the football here. And they're only getting 3.6 yards per play. So that just tells you how stubborn Mike Tomlin is with his offense. Like, we don't get enough yards. Okay, let's just run it again, right? 56 and a 45% snap share for Najee throughout week 1 and week 2. I'm expecting them to get the line share to work here, sharing the backfield with Jaylen Warren. And you look at, I talked a little bit about the Chargers defense, but they've actually been holding teams to the second fewest attempts at just 20 per game. But when you got to look a little bit deeper to get to some context here, it's Carolina and Las Vegas here, right? These are not teams that are going to blow you away with the run, right? Carolina is rushing the ball just 19 times per game through the first 2 weeks, which is the second fewest. And then you got the Raiders, just 19.5 times per game, which is the third fewest as well. So I do think that, I know for sure that Pittsburgh is going to run the ball. And I think that Najee is going to continue to get those carries. So 14.5 seems super conservative, especially because I don't fear the other offense, right? Yesterday, we both talked about liking Ramondre Stevenson to go up and over. But, there's some fear that the Jets get out to a big lead and then he doesn't run the football as much. But I'm not thinking the same thing with Justin Herbert, especially with him being compromised and having an injury. Pittsburgh defense seems to be very solid, so I expect them to play hard-nosed football, run the football, and play some really good defense.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the games this week where I think we find out which team is a contender or pretender. Because, again, both are 2-0 on the season. I know that I think the Steelers have only scored, one offensive touchdown thus far this season. And when we talk about this Steelers organization, historically, it obviously, I know they had Big Ben there, but they pride themselves on running the football. But Najee has been a workhorse over the first 2 weeks, right? 20 carries, 17 carries. I want to say Jaylen Warren is maybe still dealing with an injury there, Chris. That's why they've really propelled Najee Harris, to get the bulk of the workload here. I would be interested to see what the snap counts also look like for both Najee and Jaylen Warren thus far this season here. Let me see if I can find it. So week 1, Najee had 56% of the snap shares in the backfield. That one, it dipped a little bit in week 2 to 45%. And then Jaylen Warren did get 48% to compare to 31 from week 1. But I think that it does go through Najee here. Gonna be very curious to see if J.K. Dobbins also, just talking about the running backs here, can, I don't want to say repeat what he's done over the first 2 weeks, but if he's, going up against this rush defense in the Steelers front, if he's still able to find success in this game here. So it'll be interesting to see in this game between these two undefeated teams. I don't think we would be sitting here week 3 saying that we would have a 2-0 matchup between the Steelers and the Chargers at this juncture of the season. But it's just been that kind of season thus far in the NFL. All right, let me get over to my running back prop here for the week. I'm going to go with Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins over 25.5 receiving yards in this game. And there was a press conference that Coach McDaniels did earlier this week, and he made it a point and said that they want to get him involved a little bit more in the offense, which kind of made me scratch my head a little bit because he's pretty much been the offense for the first 2 weeks.
The entire offense, right?
Yeah.
Want him to play quarterback?
I mean, at this point, when you have Skylar Thompson starting, you probably maybe want to have him as a starting quarterback. But from week to week, his the snap counts have gone up. Week 1, it was at 52%. Week 2, on that Thursday night football game against the Bills, it was up at 62% as well. But you also take a look at what he's been able to do through in the passing game for this Miami Dolphins offense. And I mean, it's almost like he's like the running back two there. Wide receiver two there for this Miami Dolphins team, just because of what he's done through the air. I'm trying to quickly pull up the numbers here. So week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars in that game, 7 targets, 7 receptions, 69 yards. 7 receptions, 7 targets, 76 yards against the Jaguars in week 1. And last week, same thing, 7 receptions on 7 targets, 69 receiving yards for Devon Achane. Now you have Skylar Thompson that's going to be starting here, Chris, for this Miami Dolphins team. I don't think he's a guy that can throw the ball really down the field, which I feel like it's going to be a lot of swing passes, maybe screen passes going to Devon Achane. And if he's getting, again, another 6-7 targets in this game, I think he definitely clears this number. I think this could be another opportunity where you may want to ladder it up for Devon Achane in this game, going up against the Seattle Seahawks here. So I think when you're going up into that home field advantage that the Seahawks do have there, you probably want to say you maybe have a more of a conservative play calling method. And if you are throwing the football, you're going to get this ball over to a guy like Devon Achane, whether it's through the screen pass or what the case might be. I know that the Seahawks have not let opposing running backs have a lot of success through the air over the first 2 weeks, but I think with Devon Achane, it's a different story here, especially with what they have at quarterback right now. So I thought 25.5 was a little bit conservative. It's a little bit juiced at -130 towards the over. So you're probably going to see this number move to 26.5 if it hasn't already across some of the other books here, Chris. But I do like him. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he does have another game where he has 40, 50 plus receiving yards for this Miami Dolphins offense here. So over 25.5 for Devon Achane in this week 3 matchup against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, whenever you have those strong narrative plays, I don't really need to say anymore. If you're telling me that this guy's going to be more involved in the offense than he already has been, and he's been crushing this number already, I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to tell you. I absolutely love this. I'll be telling. Don't worry.
All right, so running back prop there. Let's get, if you have any more running back props, Chris, if not, take us over to wide receivers.
All right, let's move on over. Let's see. Now, I have more quarterback props, go
ahead.
But no, we'll move over to wide receiver.
Okay.
And then I'll come back and do some of the quarterbacks for honorable mention, because I kind of feel like, and maybe we can get there when we get to honorable mention, but maybe it's because we have a little more data points now and we feel like we know who these teams are, so we're more inclined to, like you said, shoot our shot a couple more times. Let's go wide receiver, and this is the one that I talked about that correlated a lot with what you were talking about. I'm taking CeeDee Lamb up and over his receiving yards here. I think it's a perfect correlation to what you were saying about Dak Prescott and how much you think he's going to have some success this week. You look at Baltimore, we just talked about it. They're allowing the most passing yards in the NFL. And CeeDee Lamb, just got that big contract. That's his job, to go out there and to perform. He had a close to $150 in week 1. Mm-hmm. Week 2, he comes, I guess you could say he comes back down to earth. He still goes over to 78.5, had 90 last week. And then Dallas, from a situational standpoint, they need a bounce back performance. Last week, they really struggled defensively, but they also, offense was just kept in check a lot more than what we expected it to be against that New Orleans Saints attack that came in there and really just punched them in the mouth early and never looked back. You mentioned it also. If Dallas doesn't have a rushing attack, I mentioned him being 25th in rushing yards, and I look at CeeDee Lamb. I know he's listed as I think he did go through practice yesterday. He is a little banged up, but I think he's going to be out there. He's number 14 in target shares and 71% snap count week 1, 83% snap count in week 2. So we know he's going to be out there. He just became the highest wide receiver in NFL history. So I'll take CeeDee Lamb to go up and over him, thinking that it could potentially be a 100-yard week for CeeDee Lamb, especially facing that Baltimore defense. CeeDee over 78.5 receiving yards here.
Yeah, I believe it was classified as an ankle injury for CeeDee Lamb, and I think the day that he missed the practice was more of a precautionary rest day for him. So I do expect him to be out there, and I think he already came out and said that he's good to go anyway. So I think that he'll definitely be out there. And again, you talk about the lack of weapons in the backfield. I think it's the same story when we talk about the wide receiving group, right? It's Brandon Cooks. Jake Ferguson's still dealing with a knee injury. We'll see if he plays this week or not. But I mean, we know that at this point that the targets are going to go there to CeeDee Lamb. And I think that they'll find ways to get him the football. You mentioned the numbers for CeeDee Lamb. I know that the targets are going to continue to being there for a guy like this. Last week, 4 receptions, 7 targets on 90 receiving yards. He had 10 targets in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. And again, we talked about earlier how bad this pass defense has been for the Baltimore Ravens. So I think the opportunities are going to be there. So it's a little bit of correlation of what you mentioned with Dak Prescott going over his passing yards and with CeeDee Lamb also on the over on his receiving yards here. So this could maybe be one of those low-key higher scoring games. And we saw what the Saints were able to do last week against this Cowboys pass defense and getting plays over the top. And we've seen what Gardner Minshew and more in case Patrick Mahomes were able to do in the first 2 weeks here. So I think that we'll see a lot of success coming from Dak and CeeDee Lamb in this game here. So couldn't definitely talk you off of CeeDee Lamb here. All right, let me get over to my receiving prop here. A couple of ways we can go here. I was kind of looking at wide receivers here in buy low situations, especially with teams that are dealing with injuries. And there was one I'll probably save for honorable mentions here for one of the ones that I do like here. So let's go over to that Rams and the 49ers game. And I know with the Rams, they're going to be without Cooper Kupp. They're already without Puka Nacua. So somebody in the absence of those two guys is going to have to step up. A lot of conversation been about Jordan Whittington. It's been about Demarcus Robinson. But I think that one guy that's been on this roster that really hasn't been talked about and that already has that rapport with Matthew Stafford is Tutu Atwell. His number is at 22.5 in this game. I do like the over for him here. And, I know the numbers this season thus far haven't really been there for him, but obviously when you're missing those two caliber guys for the Los Angeles Rams, I think the looks are going to be there for him in this game, and ask him to do 22.5 is not a lot, right? If he's in the realm of 4 to 5 targets in this game, I think he can definitely get over this number. We take a look at last week against Arizona, and I know they were in a situation where they had to throw the football for most of that game because they were in a blink of an eye trailing by multiple possessions, but he did have 3 receptions on 4 targets for 48 yards last week for the Los Angeles Rams offense. And I know that he's faced this 49ers team, obviously, plenty of times in his career, being in the same division in that NFC West. And in totality, over the last 2 seasons, or I should say last season, he had a game where he had 9 targets in that game against the Niners, and had 7 receptions for 77 yards in that game. So I think this might be a good opportunity for Tutu Atwell in the absence of Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, kind of being that low-key guy. I think this is a guy that could get it done in honestly 2 catches here, Chris. So I like the over 22.5 for Tutu Atwell in this game here for the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, if we expect, we expect the Rams to continue to throw the football, right? Like Sean McVay is not going to shy away from that, no matter who he has out there wide receiver. And I think the numbers are indicative of that. They are passing the ball at the 4.5 rate, over the full season, 38 times per contest. And if there's a way to attack San Francisco, I guess you could kind of say it is through the pass. They're giving up 200 and little over 227.5 passing yards per contest, which puts them bottom 10, which is, I guess, kind of surprising. But teams are also completing the ball against them too. 65.5% completion rate, which puts them 18th throughout the season. And they haven't played against, super great offenses so far, with Minnesota last week and, the Jets in week 1. So, I think this is a super low buy low spot for Tutu, and potential ladder spot here for Tutu as well, because I still expect him to throw the football.
All right, before we get over to more player props here and honorable mentions for NFL Week 3, let me tell everyone about the newest sponsor on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and that is going to be BetUS. BetUS is the premier sportsbook where they are the best, one of the best in the business, if not the best in the business. You could honestly bet from anywhere with BetUS, and you can also get to them internationally for BetUS. They've been around for more than 30 years, and they just launched an all-new live betting experience. Easily deposit using cryptocurrency and get lightning fast payouts. Use our link to sign up and get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. Make sure you use that promo code SGPN so they know that we sent you. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's prop partner Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Rhythm had a great NFL Week 2, 22.5% ROI on NFL spread bets, and a 44.3% ROI on NFL money line bets. Build your own model, copy one from the top performing models from the leaderboard, or press build a model for me, and Rhythm gives you predictions for every game and player prop, and also has a myriad of stats, research, and trend analysis to give you even more betting insights. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And this week, Rhythm's models do like Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals to go over 23.5 receiving yards. His prediction right now, according to BetRhythm's models, is at 44.8 for that game. So again, they do like Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals to go over 23.5 receiving yards in the game this week against the Detroit Lions. All right, Chris, let's get into honorable mentions here, man. You want to lead us off? What do we got? What are we looking at? What are you trying to get to? Talk to me.
Yeah, so I'll just go 2. I guess my 2 favorite, even though I got about 6 on here. We'll go with your boy CJ Stroud here. Over on his pass attempts. I like the number. It is 34.5. Pretty big, juicy number here, but it makes sense, as far as game script goes, in my opinion, right? So we saw, Mixon go down in the Sunday Night Football contest with the hip drop tackle. He hasn't practiced all week, not expecting him to play. Same thing for Dameon Pierce, which puts you guys with Cam Akers in the backfield. And I'm not sure how confident you are. I know Cam Akers was a serviceable backup, in his time in LA when he was with the Rams and, some other times before as well. But I'm thinking that the keys get turned, not that they already aren't turned over, but it's CJ, go win us a game. We really going to need you in this spot, And if he's going to do that, I think it's going to be, with his arm, and it's going to be through the air. You look at Minnesota defensively, they're really, really good against the rush, allowing the 8th fewest rush attempts, 7th fewest rush yards per attempt, and the 8th fewest rushing yards per game. So they're top 10 in all of those run statistical categories. And like I said, success is going to have to come through the air. I did see that Nico Collins, he was limited in practice, but he did go through practice, and I'm expecting him to play it this week, right? We talked about the new shiny toys and the ones that returned as well for CJ in this offensive line. I absolutely think that y'all gonna pass the ball in this game, So through 2 weeks, opposing teams against Minnesota, 39 attempts per contest, which is the second highest. So they're forcing teams to pass the ball because their run defense has been good. And I do kind of feel like D'Amico, he probably just said, CJ, let's see what we got this week. And CJ passes the ball a lot in this spot, So I like CJ up and over 34.5. I'll get your opinions on that one before I give you another one that I'm looking at.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? And what you mentioned about the Vikings, that their rush defense has been absolutely fantastic thus far this season. I know they gave up 100 yards last week to Jordan Mason, but again, we know when we talk about the 49ers that it's more predicated on them being run first versus passing, right? Against the Jets, they did have the Vikings, I should say, last week. Yeah, trying to pull up the numbers from week 1 for them. So yeah, we talked about Jordan Mason, 21 carries last week, 100 yards. And then against the Giants, I mean, it was Devin Singletary, but I know that that backfield is pretty much non-existent. And again, it's everything that you mentioned is about surrounding the injuries in the backfield for this Texans team, right? Where I'm pretty positive that Joe Mixon does not suit up this week. And then you're relying on Dameon Pierce, who I'm not really sold on. And then also Cam Akers, who again continues to have fumbling issues. Case in point, last week when they had the opportunity to punch it in, pretty much put that game away, but they weren't able to due to the fumble of Cam Akers. So I think the pass attempts are definitely going to be there in this game for a guy like CJ Stroud. You mentioned it, 36 attempts from last week for Brock Purdy, 42 for Daniel Jones in week 1. And again, you have the weapons on the offensive side, especially when we talk about the skill positions, right? Well, obviously, Nico Collins, who's been fantastic, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell. So I think there's an opportunity again for him to throw the football around. Again, the spread right now is sitting at 2 for this game. So I think that it's going to be one of those games where we saw similar to week 1 for the Texans, that it's going to be closer than people are thinking in this game, especially how well the Minnesota Vikings have played over the first 2 weeks here. So yeah, couldn't talk you off here. I think CJ Stroud, I think this be a game where he does, in fact, can get over his passing attempts in this game here, Chris.
Okay, good. Like the alignment there. And then all these overs, it's kind of cringy. I got to give an under now. And it's a super low conservative number, but I still think it goes under. And I'm looking at Mr. Malik Willis, under on his passing yards. And the number is probably the lowest that we've seen so far this season, but it does remind me a little bit, of here. And granted, they have a better wide receiving room, but it does remind me a little bit of Jacoby last night. Under 149.5. I think you gave out a 163.5. No sweat at all from you. Yeah. I'm not sure how much sweat we get here either. And this is why. Tennessee has been the best pass defense in the league so far. They're allowing just 114 yards per game through the air. And you look at Malik Willis, it's only his second start, in Green Bay. He threw for 122 yards last week, so he went under on 12 for 14 passing in that 16-10 win over the Indianapolis Colts. The 14 attempts was the fewest of any quarterback. And I think it proved that Green Bay, what the game plan was, just pound the rock. They ran the ball 53 times. Shows you the lack of trust that they have in Malik Willis's arm. And although I think Tennessee's rush defense has been great as well, you think that Green Bay's game plan would be the same. Kind of run the ball, try to shorten the game, lean on the defense. If you go back to the 7 starts, I've looked through Malik Willis' game log. If you go back and look at the 7 starts that he's started and played more and had at least 5 pass attempts or more, he's 0-7 to the number. He's yet to throw for 150 yards. Don't think it's going to come against the best defense on the road, even though this is a quote-unquote revenge game for him here. Tennessee needing to get off the snide as well. I think we continue to see them play really good defense against the run and the pass, honestly, but I'll take Malik Willis to go under his 149.5. So 150 passing yards here,
Yeah, you mentioned, right, the first 2 weeks, the success that the Titans defense has had against opposing quarterbacks, right? We're limiting Aaron Rodgers last week to 176, 93 yards for Caleb Williams in his first game. And they posed a question to Malik Willis, and they asked him, how does it feel to go up against your former team? And is it maybe a revenge game? And he said that he's thankful to the organization for drafting him and giving him the opportunity to become an NFL quarterback. And it's pretty much not, in so many words, he's just said it's not a revenge game. I'm not looking at it that way. Maybe he's just saying the right things to the media because they posed him that question, but also maybe in the back of his head, he's like, all right, maybe this team did trade me away, for a reason. And maybe he wants to give it back to his former team. But I when we talk about X's and O's standpoint, like I haven't seen it from Malik Willis to play an over for him, if that makes sense, right? Because last week in his first game, it was pretty much a game where we knew they were going to run the football. And I think you and I talked about this, that Josh Jacobs was going to have a pretty big game because that Colts rush defense has been one of the worst this entire season thus far, at least in the first 2 weeks, right? We saw what Joe Mixon did week 1, and then what Josh Jacobs was able to do last week as well against them. So they really didn't need Malik Willis to throw the football last week. And now you're going up against the Titans defense, who hasn't been talked about, right? Because of some of the questionable decisions that Will Levis has made. And that's really been the conversation for this Tennessee Titans team thus far this season. And I think that defense has not been talked about. I think they really do show up in this game. I think they do give a fit to Malik Willis. And maybe the advantage also on the defensive side for the Titans, because they know what Malik Willis is, because he's been with this team in practices and in few of the games. So I think the advantage right now is really with with the Titans defense here. So I give this out on another pod that I do as well on the under here. So I 100% agree with you here, Chris, on this here for Malik Willis.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, those are the ones I like the most. We won't get on here and talk for too long because this will turn into a 3-hour pod. But I'll just go with those 5 for now, and I'll kick it to you and share what your honorable mentions are.
So talked about some of the ones that I did like, and I think one of them is we're talking about a game where maybe we do see points being put up between the Eagles and the Saints. And I think the one thing that really hasn't a lot of been talked about, and we haven't talked about it here as well, has been Derek Carr and how great of a season that he's having. And I like his longest completion to go over 37.5 yards. We've seen through the first 2 weeks where that big play ability for the Saints has been there in their first 2 games, right? We saw what they were able to do against Carolina. We saw what they did against the Dallas Cowboys last week, more and so with Rashid Shaheed, right? And we saw Alvin Kamara break one out as well for the New Orleans Saints offense. Now let's talk about how bad this Eagles defense has been as well, right? Whether it's been on the ground or whether it's been through the secondary in the passing game. Kirk Cousins absolutely just slice and dice this defense up in that final drive of the game last week to get them that go-ahead touchdown and seal the victory for them on Monday Night Football. So I think a lot of that continues. And I think the one name that hasn't been talked about has been Clint Kubiak, who has been the offensive coordinator for this team and coming over for the Saints team and pretty much turned this offense around, because they were very anemic over the first couple of seasons where Derek Carr was there for the Saints team. So I say all that. I think that they can get one over the top here of the defense for the or against the Philadelphia Eagles. I do like that for Derek Carr over 37.5 longest completion. And then I'll throw one more at you. I'll get your thoughts on both here. Patrick Mahomes over 18.5 rushing yards here, Chris. Another team that's dealing with a lot of injuries in the backfield as well. So it's going to have to be running back by committee for the Kansas City Chiefs. And we know Isaiah Pacheco is going to be missing time here for the Chiefs. So they did sign Kareem Hunt to the practice squad and maybe elevate him for this game. If not, maybe next week. Carson Steele looks like he's going to be the guy that may be getting majority of the snaps here as well. Samaje Perine. I just don't think that running game is going to be there. So there's 2 ways I could have looked at this. Is that number one, that Mahomes scrambles for some yardage here, and we know he's able to do that, and he gets it that way, or that it's going to be a very pass heavy game plan for the Kansas City Chiefs because they don't have a lot of bodies in that backfield like the Isaiah Pacheco's of this world. So those are the 2 I was kind of looking at for Patrick Mahomes. And I really can't compare Patrick Mahomes, and I'll make this last point here, Chris, before I turn it over to you, that the Falcons win over to the Falcons played 2 quarterbacks this season in Justin Field and Jalen Hurts, who they did give up a lot of rushing yards to. And specifically, Justin Fields had 57, and then Jalen Hurts actually had 85 last week against this team. And I know Patrick Mahomes is not a scrambling quarterback like those 2 quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, but I do think that 18.5 seems a little conservative for a guy like Patrick Mahomes, where I do think that he can get it done here. So those are those 3 that I was looking at as far as from a quarterback perspective.
Yeah, I don't feel, I guess I feel indifferent about Patrick Mahomes because we just need him to actually like scramble and take off, right? And I know that the Atlanta Falcons defensive line hasn't been putting a lot of pressure on quarterbacks so far this season. So, you just need Mahomes to kind of take off. But you mentioned him, I actually heard that the Isaiah Pacheco injury could potentially be, I don't think it's been released yet, but heard that it could be potentially done for the season. So, that would be a tough blow for that backfield. And they really would have to, utilize Kareem Hunt and Steele and everybody else, Samaje and everybody else that they can get to, to run the football. Atlanta's rush defense hasn't been, really that superior. 161.5 rushing yards per game they're allowing, which is the sixth most so far this season. So yeah, you need Patrick Mahomes to take off. But if he does take off, I could definitely see him getting them, And then the first one you mentioned was what was it again?
So Derek Carr, longest completion over 37.5 yards.
Derek Carr. How could I forget Derek Carr? Sorry, Derek Carr. Never overlook you again, but how good you're playing right now. The New Orleans Saints, you mentioned Clint Kubiak, he's really allowed in his offense to kind of take off. They're a well-balanced attack, man. You look at, what the numbers don't quite make a lot of sense if you haven't been able to watch the games because all of the plays have been so explosive. Derek Carr is, thrown for a bunch of yards, whether it's a deep pass down the field or if it's just a check down. But the play action has been really good, right? I think they're using play action on 50% of their plays right now, offense, which is, if they finish the season that high, it'd be the highest in NFL history. So, it makes a ton of sense for them to, just kind of keep going with, some of those big plays. And you mentioned it, that Philadelphia Eagles defense has not been great by any stretch of the imagination, not just against the pass, but also against the rush as well. They're giving up, half a yard under 400 per game, which is the third most, So, yeah, I could definitely see, some explosive plays coming. And it's so interesting you said it because my honorable mention last week was definitely Kirk Cousins' longest pass completion over, I think it was 28.5, 29.5. And, I mean, he cleared that pretty easily. So, yeah, I think if he could do it, then Derek Carr could definitely do it, with the offense that they have right now and how hot they are right now on offense. It's going to take a while for the Eagles secondary to kind of gel because we know that they have some new pieces back there. So, they're also going to have to get out there too deep, safety look as well and put some pressure on the quarterback. So, yeah, I couldn't talk you off, I like both of those looks.
I'll throw one more there at you. This one's a little bit low key. I think there's an opportunity here. Justice Hill over 8.5 receiving yards. So you take a look at running backs against the Cowboys thus far this week, through the first 2 weeks. 6 receptions, 25 yards for Jerome Ford. Pierre Strong Jr. of the Browns in the first week had 2 receptions for 20 yards against the Cowboys. And then last week we saw what Alvin Kamara was able to do, 2 receptions on 65 receiving yards. He was able to break that out. From what I have watched from this Ravens team the first 2 weeks, Derek Henry, I should say, hasn't really been that third down back for this team when it comes to those short yardage situations or those 3rd and 5s. It's been Justice Hill that's been in there. And I think that if they need those couple yards there, I think that he's the pass catching back for this team. So I think this 8.5 is a little conservative. I think this is a guy that could get there in maybe 2 catches for the Baltimore Ravens backfield as far as receiving yards do go. It is a little bit tricky because again, we're not exactly sure how many receiving yards he is going to get, how many snaps he's going to get, I should say here. But I'm trying to find his if he's had any catches this season thus far. Let's see here. So he did have, if I'm reading this correctly, 6 receptions. 6 receptions, 52 yards against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1. And then last week, 2 targets for 10 yards. So he's done it in both of the games thus far for the Baltimore Ravens here. So that was the one low key that I did find Justice Hill over 8.5 receiving yards here. Chris, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one.
Jim, as soon as you said Justice Hill and we expecting that game to be a pretty explosive one from both sides of the football, it makes a lot of sense. I'll probably never give out another Derrick Henry play on the show just because I'm not sure what they're doing with Derrick Henry, especially after we heard those quotes come out before week 2. And you mentioned him, 20. Well, you didn't mention this, but 22 yards after contact on his receiving, on his what is it? Eight receptions and 10 targets so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
2 red zone targets as well. And I mean, I may be a bit traumatized, here because opening night when I thought, Derrick Henry was going to run the ball left and right and up and down and, zigzag and everywhere else. You mentioned it. It was Justice Hill that was on the field. And a lot of those dump downs, we know, a lot of the times when we're talking about Lamar, it's not a lot of, downfield threats. And he will look for those wheel routes and those drop-offs and, those out routes ran by the running back. So, yeah, I'm probably going to end up playing this, because this is a play that could go over in one possession, in one actual snap. So I like that a lot, and I do expect them to be on the field. I think both teams have a lot of possessions in this game as well. So I like this one a lot. If I'm probably going to tell you on this, over 8.5 receiving yards for Justice Hill.
Yeah,
like it.
Yeah. All right. I still have like 3-4 more, but I'm not going to sit here and waste more people's time. But there, like I mentioned, there was a lot that I did like this week. All right, Chris, let's wrap it up. We still have to do our touchdown scores here for this week. Let's quickly go through that, and then we'll get to our best bets here for the NFL Week 3 card. What do you like? Who do you like?
I'll let you go first, Go ahead.
So I think that we talked about that game for the Eagles and the Saints. I feel like that's going to be one of the games that's going to be a little bit more higher scoring this week. So again, I couldn't talk you off if you want to take Rashid Shaheed again, because I feel like he could have another big play for the for the Saints. He's at plus 145 over on DraftKings right now to find the end zone. Alvin Kamara is at minus 205, so I'm not going to give that one out. With AJ Brown again missing time here for the Eagles, I think that either maybe if you want to go Dallas Goedert plus 215, Devontae Smith's around plus 105. Anything at plus money, I'm fine with. And then we go over to the other game that I did like this week that I feel like is going to have a lot of points as well, is going to be the Lions and the Cardinals game. Greg Dortch, I think, is a little bit sneaky here. And this was one of my player props on his over receiving yards, just because the 2 slot receivers had a lot of success in the first 2 weeks against the Lions. I know the 2 slot guys have been Cooper Kupp and who did the Lions play last week that had Chris Godwin? That was another one that had a lot of success. So I know Greg Dortch is probably their guy, that's their slot guy, either him or Michael Wilson. Both those guys are at plus 370 and plus 380 for the Arizona Cardinals. And we'll talk about the Ravens and Cowboys game here quickly. Mark Andrews plus 170 maybe. And then, I think that's it, man. Everything else is really at a minus price, whether we're like in the Ravens and Cowboys game. If you do like guys for 2+ touchdowns, I think that's a possibility. Lamar plus 185. I think that's sneaky there as well for the Ravens here. Again, they're in a desperate spot here, Chris. Don't want to go down 0-3. Your season's going to be very, very difficult. Your chances of making the playoffs are going to be very, very difficult. But I think a lot of this will be on Lamar Jackson this week. So I do like plus 185 for him. If you want to go 2+ touchdowns, I did that at 11-1 here. So I'll throw about 4 to 5 out there at you, Chris. Anything you like?
Yeah, I actually like a couple running backs this week, and the outside of running backs, I did have Lamar on my list as well. I think he's absolutely in play to score this week, in Dallas. So I like that. Saquon, I think he is minus, but I think it's like minus 140. I think I'm willing to lay that, especially with we don't anticipate AJ Brown to be there. It's a hamstring that he's dealing with, right? I know he hasn't practiced this week.
Who is this? I'm sorry.
AJ Brown.
I believe he's out this week.
Is he already?
Yeah.
I know he hasn't practiced this week, but so anytime he's not there, I just think that they're gonna force feed the ball to Saquon even more. So I do like Saquon a lot. Jerome Ford, is somebody that I'm interested in. Just because I expect Cleveland to be able to run the football. I just watched my Washington Commanders run all over this New York Giants defense, and I can get Jerome Ford at plus 145. So I definitely think he's worth the play here, starting running back for the Cleveland Browns. I think they'll find some success on the ground with Jerome Ford this week. Like I said, against that that defense for the Giants that's not great at all. So those were the two running backs that really stuck out to me. I like CeeDee Lamb to get in the end zone as well, but like you mentioned, if you're not going to get him at super great odds, and I think those were the ones that kind of stuck out to me a little bit more than others.
All right. No, I mean, look, when we talk about, I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, but again, it's, a lot of the guys that we do like, and obviously the books know this as well. Like the minus prices, like the guys are going to find the end zone, right? The CeeDee Lambs, the minus 115s, the Derrick Henry's at minus 165, the Alvin Kamara's at minus 205, those type of players. Devon Achane, I think I think that he's a guy that could find the end zone here as well. He's around even money, but again, like we always say, definitely shop around for the best number.
Defensive touchdown, in Chargers in Pittsburgh. We like a team to score against the other team, a defense to score.
Could be a possibility. So let's clarify one thing here on this, Chris, because there's books out there that only offer defensive touchdowns. DraftKings does defense and special teams. So again, make sure if you're betting those, that it's also including special teams, because punt return, kickoff return also does count when it says defense/ST, because obviously special teams, excuse me, being there as well. Let me see quickly if I can find those odds here before we get to best bets for Chargers Steelers. So Steelers, Chargers, they're both at plus 360 for the defense or / special teams to score one here in this game. So again, that definitely is a possibility. All right, Chris, let's wrap it up with best bets for NFL Week 3. I know we had a really good Sunday last week, a little regression on Thursday night, but let's pick it right back up. Where are you taking us for your best bet for NFL Week 3?
Yeah, I think it's the running back. If I seem to be better on the running backs than anything else, even though I do love the 4 or 5 different quarterback plays that I like this week as well. But we'll go Najee. Just super consistent, man. Like I said, up and over 14.5 rush attempts here. I think he gets to 15. If I can get it at plus money, I got to lock it in. 20 and 17 rush attempts in the first 2 weeks. If I know that the Chargers rush defense has been good, but Mike Tomlin's stubborn. He's going to continue to give it to his running back. So yeah, I think he continues to run the football. Jalen Warren being in that backfield doesn't really scare me off. Just not a lot at all. So I'll go Najee over 14.5 rush attempts here as the best bet week 3.
All right. Yeah, I love that one as well. All right, for my best bet, I am going to go with Devon Achane receiving yards, man, over 25.5. I think that's just based off of the situation right now for this team of the Miami Dolphins with Skylar Thompson. That's going to start here. You're probably not going to have that downfield big plays without Tua and Tyreek Hill and even Jalen Waddle. And we mentioned the numbers of what Devon Achane has done over the first 2 weeks. 14 total targets through the air. Cleared this number, without even a sweat. I think that continues here with Skylar Thompson back there as a quarterback. Swing passes, screen passes. Maybe even a wheel route out there for Devon Achane. But I think even like I mentioned in the handicap, that Coach McDaniels came out and said that they even want to find more ways to get him involved, because he's been really, really productive for them on the offensive side here. So don't be surprised at the end of the night if you do see Devon Achane had another game where he had 100 plus total yards, scrimmage yards, I should say, whether it was through the ground or, more importantly, for my best bet, through the air. So again, Devon Achane over 25.5 receiving yards as my best bet against the Seattle Seahawks. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Propcast. Chris, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
Enjoy the weekend, man. Enjoy the weekend. Bet responsibly, and we'll be back on Wednesday, right,
We will be back Wednesday. I'm trying to figure out a schedule where we can do a Monday Night Football pod.
We should. We got 4 games. We got 4 teams.
Yeah,
4 games. So that's why I asked, because inquiring minds want to know. Me too. And we could definitely squeeze one in there if you.
Yeah, maybe we'll try to do one like on Sunday or something. Maybe like at halftime, or maybe I don't know. We'll figure it out offline. But I do want to get one out there because there are 2 games this week and there's 2 games next week. Also, an additional episode that will be dropping now for the Propcast with myself and Sebastian. I know we had that injury segment in there that we did for the Thursday Night Football pod. We're going to spin that off into a separate pod. They're just kind of going through the injuries similar to what we talked about with myself and Sebastian. So we'll drop that on Tuesday nights, Wednesday mornings. for that episode. And then, I mean, a lot of propcasts here. So again, great time to be subscribed. If you haven't left us a rating and review, please go ahead and do so. And don't look now, Chris. We got NBA on deck. So we're going to be getting busy with that also, with propcast there for season-long stuff. And, of course, going through our daily picks for props for the NBA season there as well. So busy times right now for the propcast. So we're just getting started here on the propcast. All right. Make sure you guys follow Chris on the Twitter machine at ChrisBeCappinn with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. Again, if you haven't already subscribed to the to the Propcast on YouTube, please go ahead and do so. Leave us a rating and review. I definitely do appreciate it. Myself and Lante will be here Sunday morning for the pregame show. So look out for us then as well. I think we'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So definitely looking forward to that. All right. Good luck with your bets this weekend. Let's break these books off, and always remember to let it ride.